You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 120. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. Let's talk sales. Oh, doesn't that sound like so much fun? But it can be. I was in sales for almost 2 decades, and truth be told, you're actually always selling, even if your job title isn't sales. I sell my services to clients, and if you're a business owner, you are too. But what happens when a prospect says no? How do you come up with what your services should be valued at? My guest today is sales coach and host of the Smart Gets Paid podcast, Leah Neaderthal. Leah is helping women not only get better with their sales, but finding the confidence they need to make more sales. Leah is like most of us in the sense that she didn't like the connotation that the word sales has. As an introvert, it was never her thing. You're going to hear how she not only made it her thing, but how finding your confidence is what's going to also define your value. Hi, Leah.
Hello.
I am so excited to talk to you. You're my first interview of the new year.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored.
Can you take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Sure. I'm Leah Neaderthal, and I'm the founder of Smart Gets Paid, and I'm a sales coach for women who run service-based consulting and coaching businesses.
And Smart does get paid, right? I mean, that's a great name.
Thanks. That's the point, right?
Yes. Dumb doesn't get paid.
Well, I talk to so many women who are so smart, have, either from their past careers or their current careers, they're doing such amazing work. They're so ambitious. They're so smart. And they think to themselves, if I'm so smart, why is getting clients so hard? Why should this be so hard for me? It's so frustrating. And so, yeah, I mean, the trick is, or not even the trick, that my whole goal is to help women, smart, ambitious women, be able to do the work that they love with the clients they love and get paid handsomely for it.
I love that. That's my goal. I'm smart. I want to get paid handsomely.
Absolutely.
How did you get on this path? What was your career like before? Because I imagine you didn't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to be a sales coach and this is what I'm going to do.
No. And in fact, I'm probably if you had looked in my earlier career and my background, you would probably name me in your yearbook least likely to become a sales coach. I am, I'm from the South. I'm a total introvert. I'm so much more comfortable, being in the background, doing the work. And I certainly don't come from a sales background. My background is actually, I spent my corporate career in corporate marketing. I worked in big advertising agencies. And then I went in-house to a tech company in Chicago. And in 2010, I quit my job and traveled the world. I'd saved up all this money. I was going to do this year-long trip around the world with my partner at the time. And so we started backpacking. We had this whole itinerary. We started backpacking. And have you ever backpacked, Michelle?
I have not. No.
Well, okay. One thing, if you're listening to this, you guys, you've backpacked, how it's actually not that fun. You want to see all these places. You want to see these places and experience these places. And what you find is that you're going from city to city, or town to town, or little hostel to hostel, and it's such a whirlwind. And you don't see and experience places the way you want to. And so it's just a blur. So what we decided was somewhere between, Nicaragua and Panama, we sort of decided this is not what we wanted. So we decided to slow down And instead of trying to go on this whirlwind year-long trip around the world and then go back and spend the rest of our lives, working for somebody else, living under fluorescent lights, what if we started a business that would allow us to live anywhere? And so we did. We started a marketing and web design agency, and that was our first business. So after about 8 months, we cut the trip short. We came back to the States, and I feel like as soon as we landed on US soil again, I started to panic, basically. Like, we came back to get new clients, so that we could sort of re-up, keep traveling, go on. And at that time, we would spend anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months in a place, running this business that would allow us to live anywhere. And so our whole job was just to get clients when we came back to the States. But I feel like I just clammed up. All of my corporate conditioning, came back with a vengeance. I was like, I need the 401k matching. I need insurance. I need all of these things. And even though we really only had one job, which was to get clients, I couldn't do it. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was so paralyzed. And I actually even went back and got a job working for somebody else again. But which was a total mistake. It lasted 6 months. It was awful. After having run our business on our own, could not go back and work for somebody else. But I knew that if I was going to recommit to the business that we were running, this consulting business, I needed to learn how to get clients. But I didn't want to do it the way I'd seen anybody else sell to me because, I just felt a little salesy and didn't feel right. So I ended up teaching myself. I read everything I could get my hands on, which turned into 65 books about selling, but really about a lot of other things like psychology and social dynamics and stuff like that. I tested every single strategy with my own clients. Anything that felt salesy, I ditched. Anything that felt comfortable, I kept. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was forming a selling methodology that started really working, and it felt really comfortable. And using that selling methodology, I have a 92% win rate, and I've sold $3 million in work. So that's what
it was working.
Women. Yeah, it was working. So that's what I teach women now. So, just to go back to your original question, definitely did not come from a sales background, but everything I learned and I had to sort of learn along the way, showed me that, listen, if I was struggling with this, other women were struggling with this too. And so could I take what I have learned for myself and what made our business successful and what made me successful in subsequent businesses and share it with others?
And what do you think, what is one key part of it? I don't want you to share your secret sauce or anything because people need to come and work with you to get that. But is there something that really stands out for you? Because as someone who spent 18 years in sales, and since I still own my own business, so I am constantly selling, myself, my services, I feel everything is relationship based. And I think that when we think of sales, we think of slimy car salesmen. And nobody wants to do that or be that. And so I come from the perspective of it's all relationship based. So before I try to sell you anything, I want to get to know you as a person. And that's where I come from in my line of work and what I've done for, decades before. So what part of what you teach is the aha moment for people?
Yeah. There's sort of so much, and it's so interesting to talk to somebody who comes from a sales background, because I feel like I spent a lot of time thinking, well, I don't come from a sales background, so I'm at some sort of disadvantage here. But if you look at it in terms of the relationship way that you're talking about, you realize, and you sort of adopt a beginner's mindset, you realize that not having a sales background doesn't have to be a disadvantage, right? It can be an advantage because it forces you to really start fresh. But I think the one thing that really changed things for me was this idea that, and this is going to sound so basic, but it's this idea that you are on the same level as everybody else. Because I think we spend a lot of time feeling like our prospects have all the power that they're the big shots, right? Or they have all the power and they know what they're doing. And we're sort of sitting there like asking to be hired
Yeah.
and asking for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can see yourself, if you can just sort of put yourself in this mindset of, I'm the same as everybody else, it really changes things. There's actually a woman named Deborah Tannen. She's a sociolinguist, and she wrote a book. She's written several books actually, but she identified this concept of it's called one up, one down. So when I teach people how to do this, and if you're listening to this and you're not in a car driving, you can do this with your hands. You have like you take your left hand and put it sort of parallel to the ground, right? And put it in front of your eyes, and then take your other hand, your right hand, and put it sort of parallel to that. A lot of times we feel like we are one down. We're in the one down position. So take your little left hand and put it below your right hand. But if you can see yourself on the same level, then it changes every interaction, and you actually can start to build the relationship that you are talking about, Michelle.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. And I think that for a lot of us, you forget that you are the expert, and that's why someone's coming to you. Especially when you're selling yourself as the service, it's that mindset, like you said, of, no, I am good at what I do. Why wouldn't you want to work with me or buy my service or buy my product? Because I know what I'm talking about. And there's a reason that this prospect has come to you in the first place. And I think we often forget that.
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time with my clients working on their messaging, value-based messaging. And one of the reasons we do that is because it makes the sales process a lot easier. You attract the right people, the people that you solve. It really communicates your value. But another really important reason is that you take the value that you provide once you can really articulate it, and you almost like wrap yourself in it as it was a blanket, and you use it to whether you want to think about it in terms of like stealing yourself for the sales process or for a sales interaction, or just reminding yourself that, yes, I do provide all this value. And when, if you sort of, the sort of thing we get to in our work together is that you are offering that value to your client, not asking to be hired. And that's a really important shift. If it doesn't require you to be like, I'm so great, I'm the best at what I do, I'm, the expert guru, whatever, which makes a lot of women uncomfortable, right? But if you can simply say, I provide tremendous value. I can bring that value to my clients, and I'm offering it to them and not asking them to hire me.
I like that. And I feel like there's also this component that comes into play when it comes to pricing yourself as well, especially when you start out and you don't know where you should be. And there's that uncomfortable level of, well, what if I, overprice myself and they say no, or, it's too much and where do I begin? Is that something that all comes into play with you and your clients as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody, first of all, nearly every woman I talk to is undercharging. Even the ones who think they're not undercharging, I know for a fact that they could be charging more. So this is sort of a universal thing. But it absolutely comes into play, this is what we're talking about in terms of value. It comes into play with pricing, because if you don't, and if you don't understand the value, if you can't articulate the value, then you're kind of trying to convince them to see why they need you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you feel like you're in a convincing position, then of course you're not going to charge what you would like to be charging. And of course you're going to think, oh, well, if I price myself too high, then they're going to say no, right? But if you can start the conversation at the level of value, that's the first step to getting paid what you're worth, right? So, it's the difference between saying something like, I'm a graphic designer, and then charging by the hour, versus, saying something like, I create, brands that turn your viewers into loyal raving fans, right? That
Mm-hmm.
value statement right there really starts the conversation in a much different place. And then you can start to price your work according to that value.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely an issue, and I can attest to this because when I started out, I literally was charging clients $100 a month for doing exactly what I do now.
For
And
hopefully a lot more than that
a
now.
lot more, yes. But, I didn't have the confidence in myself. I didn't, I'd done some research on what, competitors were charging. And, I think when you come into this, especially from a corporate background where you're like, well, this is what I made per hour, and they gave me benefits and whatnot. It's really a learning curve overall as to what you should even begin to charge with.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the you talk about looking around and asking competitors. I have so many opinions about this, but I'll say that I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, women especially, are just sort of sold a bill of goods when it comes to pricing. This hourly pricing, I call it like the bad math of entrepreneurship. It's everything. Everyone who has started a business has heard some version of this, which is take what you want to make in a year,
Mhm.
divide it by the number of hours you work, a 40-hour work week, and that's your hour, right? But
Right.
the problem is, and you and everybody who's listening to this knows that if you're not working, then you're not making money, and it just leaves a lot of people broke and working too hard. So this is why, when you can articulate your value and pair it with confidence and that sort of peer mindset that we were talking about, you can start to charge value based pricing. So price for the value, not for the hours or the deliverables.
Yes, I wish that I would have learned that in the beginning. I had a client who was a coach who said to me, "Well, you're 100. I bet you could make $250 a month off a client, and you would only need like 10 clients or something to, make a good income." I'm like, that's funny. Do you know how many hours that takes me to work? I live in Silicon Valley. You know, I need more
Mm-hmm.
than $250 a month per client. Because that's not going to get us anywhere.
Right.
Nor is it any reason to leave a corporate job where, I could be stressed out and hate it, but I'd be making a lot more money, at it at the same time. So there's always that pro and con balance in all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think it's also, going back to what we were saying about um, you're the same as everybody else. I feel like I see this a lot with women. Um, we feel so lucky to be there, like wherever there is, there in the conversation, there with, a client who expresses interest in working with us, even there in conversations about maybe getting a full-time job, right? We
Mhm.
feel so lucky to be there that we don't feel like we can sort of stand in our own power, right? In our own
Mm.
value, in our own confidence. And so part of my work is helping people helping the women I work with understand, like, you're not, yes, you can be grateful, but that doesn't mean you're lucky. And that doesn't mean that you should, um, you know, subjugate what you need in terms of the price you want to charge, or set boundaries, or assert yourself, or get to a working relationship that's really advantageous for you and profitable for you. I don't know if that's making sense, but like what you said just sort
It
of
does.
sparked that in me. Just this thing that, like, I hear so much about, like, I feel so lucky, and that causes us to maybe agree to or do things that we wouldn't otherwise do.
I love the way you put that. And yeah, the light bulbs are really going off in my mind right now because that makes total sense that, we do feel this lucky part. And, I don't know if men feel this same way. I kind of doubt it. Just judging from my husband, he doesn't stand around going, "Oh, I'm so lucky to be doing this right now," or, but he does at the same time say, he works remotely too. So he will say, "I'm so lucky that I have this job that allows me to pick up the kids, drop off the kids, be there for dinner every night, not travel, 300 days out of the year." So he recognizes that too. But at the same time, I think there's an extra component where he needs to go and find something that also lights him up and doesn't just make him feel lucky to be here at home when he is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, like I said, it touches so many things. I mean, people do it in dating all the time. I feel so lucky to be with this person and that this person has expressed interest in me. But then maybe you ignore things that you maybe put yourself second, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I think women especially are socialized to do, you know? And so when you start your own business, this this conditioning really works against you, and you have to really unlearn it so that you can learn that confidence and that you belong here.
I love that. And how do you start to learn that? Where do you even begin?
Well, first you work with me, of course. No, I'm just kidding. um, where do you start to learn it? You start it in your value. I mean, that's I everybody anybody who's heard me on or worked with me or heard me on my podcast knows that this is what I talk about. All I mean, it's like this such a foundational element. Really being able to articulate your value. I think it's where confidence begins. But there, I think there's a few different ways of confidence, right? There's like confidence that's sort of motivational, like girl, be more confident, right? And I think that's sort of there's a place for that. But, what really builds confidence is, especially in the sales process, is like when you have a full sales pipeline, you can be pretty confident.
Mm-hmm.
When you know your value, you can be pretty confident. When you have clients that say yes, nothing builds confidence more than clients who say yes.
And then what happens when they say no? We were
Well,
going to talk about this, and I feel like we've gone on this tangent that's been so fantastic. And I'm like, okay, but then what?
what happens when they say no? Well, I mean, first of all, I think sometimes clients, I think sometimes we hear no when it's not a hard no. And so
Yeah.
I am sort of this eternal optimist where like, unless it's a no, it might be a no later. Or sorry, it might be a yes later.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a yes different. But I think that we'll always sort of, our like psyches will always sort of gravitate towards the negative. And so sometimes we hear no when there isn't a no. But yeah, I think that it's important to understand like why clients say no, because it's, the reasons why they say no might be different than what you expect.
And you bring up a good point, because I think that oftentimes, especially when we look at pricing ourselves and the value that we bring to the table, when someone says, no, your price is too high, that's not a reflection on you. That's a reflection on they simply can't afford it. Doesn't mean that you should lower your prices or give them a discount. It just simply means that they can't afford it. So they need to figure out on their end that, if they want the value that you bring, that they need to start bringing some more value or whatever it is on their end in order to afford you.
Absolutely. Well, I think there are two ways of looking at it. The first is maybe three. First is they literally don't have the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
In which case they weren't a client for you even before you started talking,
Right.
right? You haven't done anything wrong by pricing it the way you did, because your price should come from you, right? I tell all my clients this: your price comes from you, and that this potential client wasn't even a client long before they ever met you, because the number that they had in their head was different than the number you had in your head, right? So it was never meant to be. The second is clients don't when clients say no because of price, it's not necessarily because of price, it's because they don't see the value. They don't understand or see how their life will be different or their business will be different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, when that's sort of the next step, going back and saying, well, how can I communicate? How can I communicate the value more clearly, more quickly? How can I start the conversation around value so that by the time we get to price, they've fallen in love with their own future?
Oh, I love the way you put that. They've fallen in love with their own future. That's brilliant.
Thank you. It's it's when you think about when you buy something, right? You buy something because you know in some way your life will be different or better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our clients, especially if you're selling into individuals, it's one thing. If you're selling into businesses, it's actually not all that different. And that like they need to fall in love with how their world would be different. That's the job of a salesperson, of the sales role when you're in your business.
It's so true. And I think that if you find a prospect that doesn't have that mindset, that's something they need to work on as well. For the first time, I had a prospect last month. She's now a client. And when we got to talking about pricing, she said, well, I have an hourly rate for what my time is worth. So I need to know how much time I'm going to have to spend doing this and then what your monthly retainer is. And when I shared it with her, she goes, that's perfect. And it was just the first time that someone had actually said that to me out loud that I went, this is genius. I'm so glad she thinks this way of my time is worth this much. So how much effort do I have to put into it, versus what you're going to bring to the table so I don't have to do it.
Right. I love that.
I do too. I'm like, I wish everybody had this mindset.
Right. I know. They're definitely, I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing clients where I'm just like, I want to replicate you.
Yeah. The ones who pay when they get their invoice right away.
Well, that and, just like have the same mindset.
Yeah.
Have a similar mindset and are eager and willing and want to do the work.
Yeah. And who will let you do the work that you need to do as well, without the micromanaging and all those things we didn't like in the corporate world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. I love, there's so many quotes and bits in here that I'm like, I can't wait to take this. I'm renaming the title. So
good.
I think we're going to go with confidence is how you define your value.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes. I'm saying it out loud so that way I can remember it when we stop recording. Oh, I love it, Leah. I love that it's like a breath of fresh air of how you approach it. And it's not a salesy aspect. I like that you're female focused of, this is the struggle that we as women have, and this is how you help fix it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, one thing I'm a personal development junkie. I love learning about myself and why I am the way I am and why, the things that are holding me back are holding me back. And so I love that process and I love sharing that with women because you can't do this work. You can't run your own business. You can't go out and get the clients that you want to get paid, handsomely, dramatically more than you currently are without shining a light on what we bring to it, what we bring to this process. Because there's a lot to unpack. And once you can do that, it really frees you up to get clients, but also to run your business in incredible ways.
Absolutely. Can you share with everyone where they can find you, your podcast, how they can work with you?
Sure. So if you are listening to this podcast and hopefully you are a podcast person, head over to the Smart Gets Paid podcast. That's my podcast where I go behind the scenes with my actual clients to share actual coaching calls as we talk through some of their biggest challenges, which you might face as well, and share some insights there. Of course, I'm huge on LinkedIn is like my thing. It's where I do all of my, I share all of the strategies. I'm sharing tips and insights daily. So find me on LinkedIn. And then of course, my website, smartgetspaid.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing yourself and coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I loved Leah's perspective around selling because it's not only unique, but I feel like it goes to your heart. When you believe in yourself and what you do and have to offer, you'll find the confidence you need to elevate yourself when you present your services to prospects. You have a value that is unlike anyone else's. It's more than okay to promote yourself and show others that you can change their lives with what you do. Sales doesn't have to be slimy, so don't be afraid to promote yourself and what you offer. And if you still find it scary, go seek out Leah's help and enlist her to work with you. Until next week, be yourself, believe in yourself, and define your value.